Welcome to the Newsome MMA betting podcast. I'm your host as always, Newsome, and tonight from the betting perspective, I'm going to break down UFC Fight Night 128 in Atlantic City, New Jersey. This is also the last UFC event before we head into another 2-week break as well, which sucks, but it is what it is. So as always, I've got my bets and potential bets listed, and I'll break those down in full for you. Everything else that I haven't bet, I'll add to the quickfire round at the end of the podcast. I'll give you a pick, a reason why, and also why I passed from the bet as well. So, without wasting any time, jumping straight into the first full breakdown in the main event of the evening, we've got Edson Barboza versus Kevin Lee. Now, this is a fight that, I was looking at from many different angles, and the first angle I was looking at is fight doesn't go the distance. I think the best I could have got that was at minus 200. I did like the line, but I just wanted to see where it went, to be honest, and it actually pulled a little further away. I'm sure it's like minus 250 in places now, which I do still see a lot of value in that line, but I watched tape on the fight just to see if I could, find an edge. I know it's a close fight, and I did. I've actually got the bet on Kevin Lee, so I've got 2.5 units on him at minus 120. I thought I'd actually hit a bet boost on him as well, which would have taken it only down to like minus 117, minus 118. But after I put the bet on, I realised that I hadn't actually clicked the button. But minus 120 is still a great line, and I don't think we'll see that line again either. So I really like Kevin Lee in this spot. He's a fighter that I've won a lot of money off in the past. He's also a fighter that I lost a bet on him against Michael Chiesa. Just a bad read on that fight. But yeah, I've made a ton of money off him, and he's always a solid performer. His striking is improving. He's got decent boxing. He's using his kicks a lot more as well. That also sets up his wrestling, which is where he is definitely got the biggest advantage over Edson Barboza in this fight. Just first of all, though, I've got a theory that I just want to share, and I actually think Kevin Lee really isn't chinny at all. I hear a lot of people talking about, the guy's gets wobbled every time he gets hit. Yeah, sure, he's been wobbled, and he's been rocked a couple of times, and he's also got one TKO loss on his record as well. But listen, he's fought some really good strikers, and at this level of competition, when you fight in high-level strikers, it's to be expected. You're gonna take a knockout. Well, it wasn't even a knockout; it was a TKO. You're gonna get finished. You're gonna get rocked. You're gonna get wobbled. You're gonna get dazed. But the thing is, with Kevin Lee, he recovers really quickly after being rocked as well. So his chin here isn't a huge concern, and I mean that from just looking at tape and previous fights. Don't get me wrong, Barboza's got some of the nastiest kicks in MMA, so if he kicks him clean in the face, shin to the chin, yeah, he's going to go to sleep. But listen, so will the rest of the division as well. If Edson Barboza hits anybody clean with a kick in the head, the chances are they're going to be taking a canvas nap. So moving into a bit of the stylistic differences, Barboza's got really good takedown defense. We saw that in his last fight against Khabib. It took Khabib quite a while to actually get him down. He failed on his first two attempts, fresh, when the fighters aren't sweaty, and there was no slipping. He still stayed standing against Khabib for those first two takedowns, but inevitably Khabib did end up taking him down. But the takedowns that Khabib was trying to get to actually score on him were more body lock, drag downs and trips and things like that. And Barboza's got really good balance. You can see that. You can see that just in the Khabib fight there and there alone. He's got good balance. He can stay on his feet. He's got that will and determination to stay on his feet, and that's what kept him up a lot of the times against Khabib. Khabib didn't have it all his own way, trying to get him down to the mat. But this is where I think Kevin Lee's different. Yes, Kevin Lee's got trips. Yes, he can drag you to the mat. Yes, he can throw you to the mat. We saw that against Tony Ferguson a couple of times. He got the body lock and then threw him to the ground. But Kevin Lee also has the standard wrestling takedowns, such as your double legs and your single legs, and he's actually got one of the best double legs in the game. And the reason why he's got one of the best double legs in the game is because of his entry. A lot of the takedowns in wrestling, a lot of the better wrestlers have this high percentage of takedown scored because they just have really, really good entries. They don't make it telegraphed. They set it up well. They set it up with strikes, and they shoot when their opponent isn't expecting it to catch him off guard, and that's what Kevin Lee does. He's not predictable. He'll strike. He'll be happy striking. He'll hang with most people in the division, but then he'll shoot that takedown, shoot that double leg, a great entry, get the hands locked behind the top of their legs, and then from there, I don't care how good takedown defense you've got. I don't care what sort of percentage takedown defense you've got. If someone like Kevin Lee locks his hands up behind you, well, at the top of your legs, and shoots that double, you're going down at that point, and then it's all a case of what's your get up game like. How are you fighting off your back? Can you drag yourself towards the cage? And this is really how I see the fight going down. I think Kevin Lee can hang with Edson Barboza to an extent. He has to he has to get through that kicking range though. He can't stand at distance with Edson Barboza. Edson Barboza will eat his legs up, he'll eat his body up, and then once he's starting to kick Lee to the body and the legs, Lee's going to be then thinking, okay, at what level is he going to start kicking? And then it wouldn't surprise me if that head kick came and knocked him out. So Kevin Lee definitely has to be careful, and it's not going to be a total straightforward fight for Kevin Lee. He's going to have to work for this. Barboza's not a jobber. He's not someone that will get walked over very easily. But I don't think Kevin Lee won't be content at kicking range. He won't be happy staying there. There's no way he moves backwards from Barboza and stays at that range. I'm 99.9% sure that he's not going to do that. He'll be the one pushing forward. He'll be the one getting inside to boxing range. And I actually think, I think when Kevin Lee is actually inside that boxing range, and the exchanging punches, I fancy Kevin Lee in there, not to a massive extent, but Kevin Lee can hang. He can hang with the strikes on the feet. In boxing range, unless he's fighting a boxer, then he'll probably step back to kicking range. But in this particular fight, he can definitely, as long as he gets inside, like I say, doesn't stand outside, then he can definitely hang with Barboza. But I just don't think it's going to be too long before you see Kevin Lee start striking and then just drop down, level change, and start trying to take Barboza down to the mat. I think once Barboza's got his back on the mat and he's away from the cage, I just don't see him getting up. And Kevin Lee's also got one of the best back takes in MMA as well. He's just that transition from the takedown to making his way up the body, taking the back, and then hanging off the back is just incredible to watch. It's incredible to see, and he does a great job of doing it. And I can see that happening again here. Barboza's not the best grappler, and especially when he's flat on his back against someone that will maul you like Kevin Lee will. He doesn't just sit there. He doesn't just stay in position. He looks to advance position. He looks to finish the fight. Ultimately, I think that's what's going to happen. I think Kevin Lee's going to end up submitting Edson Barboza. I think it's probably going to be a rear naked choke. I think we're going to anybody that's betting Kevin Lee, including myself, I think we're going to have some hairy moments at the start of the fight where Kevin Lee's really working out his distance, whereas Barboza will know what distance he wants, where he wants to be, which is, like I've said a million times already, is that kicking range. Kevin Lee will be trying to figure out how to get inside, the best way to do it without getting caught. So he'll have a few things going on in his head. So it might be hairy for the first few minutes or even the first round, but eventually Kevin Lee will get inside. He will get that takedown, and I think in the round where Kevin Lee gets a takedown, if he has more than 2 minutes to work, I think he'll get that finish. I think anything under 2 minutes, it might be a bit too close for the round ending. But that's the other thing as well. Once Kevin Lee does start taking him down, we've seen how Barboza's cardio holds up when he's defensively grappling and trying to stand back up to his feet and trying to defend takedowns. That's a completely separate sort of gas tank than what he would have striking. When he's striking, he won't tire as much because that's his bread and butter. But when he's defending takedowns, like I say, and defensively grappling on the mat, he's shown against Khabib that he gasses, and I know Khabib does that to pretty much everyone he fights. He sucks that energy out of you when he's on top and really controlling you. But he didn't do that against Aljamain at UFC 223. Aljamain didn't visibly gas like Barboza, so I do have questions about Barboza's gas tank. And to be fair, the same questions I have about Kevin Lee's gas tank as well. I don't think either of them have got the best gas tank. So if it does go the stretch and it does go into the championship rounds, I think they're both going to slow together. I think they're both going to tire together. I don't really see any one of them having the upper hand over each other in that respect. And that's another thing as well. If Kevin Lee doesn't get that submission win or that TKO on the mat, I think the more takedowns he gets, the easier the fight gets. The easier those takedowns come, the easier the rounds become, and I just see an accumulation of rounds being totted up. If it goes to the decision, I can see him winning a decision as well. So yeah, 2.5 units on Kevin Lee at -120. Ultimately, I think, like I say, it starts off a bit sketchy. He will eventually get those takedowns, and at some point, I would say late round 2, maybe early round 3, he'll get that takedown, and he'll make his way to the back and submit Edson Barboza. So the next full breakdown, we've got a really intriguing fight here. We've got Aljamain Sterling against Brett Johns. Now, anybody that's on Twitter and you're following all the right guys and all the people you should be following, all the handicappers, you'll know that every man and his dog's on Brett Johns, and there's a reason for it. And this also isn't something that I don't believe. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of cappers have got like their own individual little groups and people that they talk to in DMs and stuff like that. As people don't really like talking out publicly about who's going to win a fight before the odds are released, just because if the bookmakers are looking at where to line the fights, how easy is it just to drop a fighter's name into the search bar on Twitter and see all the good handicappers talking about a fighter and who they think is going to win. So, but the reason I mention this is that although people have the conversations, I don't think it's something that's massively spoken about. So when the odds are released and suddenly everyone's smashing bets on a specific fight, there's usually a reason for that, and there is in this case with Brett Johns. So I actually think it's going to be a close fight, and I said it last week when I bet Brad Tavares and Krzysztof Jotko. I said that was going to be a close fight, but a close fight where I saw a really good edge for one side, which is obviously Brad Tavares, and that happened, that cashed, I won the bet. So similar situation here. I think it's going to be a close fight, but I really do see a sizable edge for Johns. I don't know how harsh I'm going to go in on Sterling right now, but I think he's a very questionable fighter, shall we say, especially at this level of competition. Coming into the UFC, there's always some gimme fights and fights that you put in there to win, but now Sterling is in the rankings and is really fighting against the top guys in the division. I've just got so many questions about him. For a start, I don't think he's improving much, if he is improving at all. From fight to fight, he just doesn't look any better. At one point, I actually thought, okay, yeah, his striking is looking a little better this time, but that seems to have plateaued. I think it's really average. He's got a good movement, in regards to speed and angles and stuff like that. But when he eventually decides to strike, his movement sort of halts and he becomes really flat-footed, and he's just throwing little kicks and little meaningless jabs, and just he's looking like he's trying to do something but just not executing it, and it's just not a good look for him at all. He's a Division 3 wrestler as well. But coming with that, he should have great takedown defense, but he doesn't. He gave up 2 takedowns to Barao. He gave up 3 takedowns to Brian Caraway. He gave up 4 takedowns to Gibson as well. I don't know. There's just something about Sterling. He came in with this hype fighting. In the gym of Matt Serran, Ray Longo, and he had all this talent around him. All this great support. He had some hype from the UFC and Dana White as well, and I think that's all it was. It was just hype until he's got to a position where now we're actually starting to really see the Sterling. We're starting to see the flaws. We're starting to see how he just doesn't match up that well against the top of the division. Sterling normally fights close as well, and what I mean by that when I say it, because I say it quite often, is he always tends to tends to match the level of his opponent, whether the opponent be a little bit better than him, whether the opponent being a little bit worse than him. You look at him against Aspen Sao. He looked, not incredible, but he looked as good as Aspen Sao. And at that point, you're thinking, all right, okay, Aspen Sao's elite. He's at the top of the division. Sterling's hanging with him in here. Looks great. Yep, Sterling's definitely one for the future. And then you look at him against Renan Barão, a guy that's very, very clearly and visibly declining. Someone that hasn't looked great in years. Sterling goes out there and looks as good as Barão. So that's what I mean by fighting close. So he fights close. He normally edges around late into the fight, so it's normally 1-1 going into the third round, and then he'll just he'll get that takedown or just that little bit of something which just sways the judges to get the decision. But then you've got Johns on the other hand. He's a fighter that's got legitimate skills. He's got great wrestling. He's got jiu-jitsu. His boxing's improving as well. He's a prospect. He's a real prospect, and he's definitely a future top 5 or 5 to 10 fighter in that division. I know he's broke the top 15 now, so he is a ranked fighter, but it doesn't end there for Brett Johns at all. He's improving every fight. He's got 100% takedown defense with great scrambles as well, which we saw in his last fight against Joe Soto, a fight where I think I actually picked Joe Soto. I can't remember 100%, but I'm pretty sure I did, because I just thought that where Brett Johns excels on the mat, Joe Soto was a great wrestler himself, great jiu-jitsu artist, got knee bars, leg locks, all kinds of submissions. Joe Soto went in for a takedown within like the first 90 seconds. Brett Johns rolled with the takedown. That's why I don't think it sort of classes as a takedown conceded. He rolled with the takedown straight into a calf slice. I mean, how often do we see calf slices in mixed martial arts? And tapped him out pretty much immediately. And man, it was so impressive. I could talk all night about how good that win was for Brett Johns. And like I've already said, he's a great wrestler too. He's got elite takedowns. He's got really good entries. He's got great striking to wrestling transitions as well. So although he's not the most prolific striker or the prolific boxer, he uses his striking just enough to be able to get inside and really start attempting those takedowns. He changed takedown attempts together quickly as well in order to lock his hands around his opponent's body. So when he level changes, shoots him for that takedown. Like I said, he's got good entries, but sometimes it's not always there. If it's not a good entry, he'll just press him against the cage, and he'll just chain the takedown attempts together. So he'll go from one to the other to the next until he gets the fighter down. He is relentless like that, and ultimately Brett Johns is just a winner. He will find a way to win, and that's why he's just such a good fighter, and he's a breath of fresh air for the division. He's great to watch. Like I say, I think it's going to be a close fight, and like I say, he's unbeaten for a reason as well. He's had a few split decisions, but he's also had some good fights against Quan Ho Quack, Albert Morales, and I've already mentioned Joe Soto as well. So ultimately, what I think is going to happen here, I think initially Sterling's going to be moving away from Johns. I can't see a scenario where Johns isn't the aggressor. I think Sterling's going to be moving away. I think he's going to be trying to tip and tap his shots as he does. Absolutely not worried about Brett Johns getting knocked out here. Sterling has got nothing. He puts nothing behind his punches. I'd be very surprised if he caught him with something that actually knocked Brett Johns out. I think initially, like I say, Sterling will be moving backwards. He'll be throwing the little kicks and the little punches. I think the pressure will eventually just become a little too much for Sterling. Johns will start landing his jab. He'll start getting inside. He'll start working Sterling. I'm not saying he's going to be working him. I'm going to be looking at any sort of elite boxer, because I don't think Johns is a great striker yet. I think he's got the potential, but he's certainly a better striker than Aljamain Sterling, and I think once he gets inside, he will get those takedowns. I think initially it might be tough for Johns to actually get Sterling flat on his back, because Sterling, although he does get taken down, he does scramble well if the entries aren't right. But that's another thing. Sterling, he just hasn't fought the caliber, and I'm gonna make it sound like Brett Johns is like a D1 wrestler, and I'm not trying to do that because he's not, but he hasn't fought that great of a wrestler, not as great as Brett Johns. I mean, you could argue Brian Caraway is the best wrestler that he's fought so far, and it was a close fight. It was a split decision that I do believe it was the right decision, but Brett Johns, he's just he's on a completely different level than Brian Caraway, and I know I know Sterling was quite new to the UFC at that point. I think that was only like his third or fourth fight in, but he got beat by Brian Caraway. He got wrestled by him. He scored a takedown on Caraway as well. That's fair enough. But listen, if he goes for a takedown against Brett Johns, it wouldn't surprise me if Brett Johns scrambled in a similar fashion to what he did against Joe Soto. Not saying he's going to pull off another calf slicer, but just wherever this fight goes, it's going to be Brett Johns that's on top. But like I say, I don't think it's going to be, I don't think he's going to win by a landslide. I think he could definitely win a 30-27. I think it will be a decision victory on the scorecards. Would it surprise me if Sterling took an early round? Maybe not. But ultimately, I can't see past a Brett Johns win at this point. I think it's really going to open everybody's eyes quite a lot here, because the betting line's been bouncing up and down. I think Brett Johns is even in plus money right now. It's crazy. I thought there was value up to, say, minus 150. I honestly thought we'd be looking at somewhere like minus 175 though. But Sterling's got the name value. He's in a very recognised gym. He's becoming a vet now. He's had a lot of fights in the UFC. I think we're looking at like 7 or 8 fights. So I think that's the reason why that's what's holding Brett Johns' line back from going ridiculously stupid. I've got 2.5 units on Brett Johns at minus 105. I like the line a lot. Like I said, I thought there was value up to minus 150, so I definitely feel like I'm getting value here. Ultimately, I think he's going to win a decision on the scorecard, maybe 29-28, but don't be surprised if it's a 30-27 domination either. He's just unbeknowingly to a lot of people, he's just on a different level than Aljamain Sterling. And I'll put my neck on the line and say that if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll hold my hands up. I'll take that L like a man. But it's a different. There's levels to this game, and I just think where Aljamain Sterling's plateaued, Brett Johns is just going from strength to strength and looking great. So yeah, Brett Johns by a unanimous decision victory. And then my final full breakdown. And might come as a bit of a shock to some people that don't already know this and haven't already looked at the bets for this card, because I've had this one up for quite a while. We've got Corey Anderson against Patrick Cummins, and I bet Corey Anderson. I've got 2 units on him at plus 115. Really love this plus money. He opened at plus 145 over in America, I think, or Canada. Obviously, I didn't have access to that line, but when it came over to the UK, then yeah, I took that plus 115 straight away. Now, a lot of people might be thinking, well, Newsome, I've listened to your podcasts over the last few months, and I've heard a few times you using the words, yeah, but he's fought Corey fucking Anderson, because I've actually mentioned Corey Anderson quite a lot in previous breakdowns. And that's true. Like, Corey Anderson isn't a great fighter, but listen, neither's Patrick Cummins either. And I said it last week, I've said it a lot lately, I will continue to say it. The fighter you bet on doesn't have to be a great fighter, they only have to be better than their opponent. And Corey Anderson is a better fighter than Patrick Cummins. Now, both fighters are primarily wrestlers. Cummins has got the slightly better wrestling credentials, funnily enough. He's the D1 wrestler, opposed to Anderson, who's the D3 wrestler. But this is MMA, and I think that Anderson has got the better MMA wrestling. So what I mean by that is he uses his striking game well to close the distance, shoot takedowns. He's not just a brute wrestling match where they get hold of each other and then the takedowns come and the pin happens. It's not a case of that. It's a case of working to the takedown, making it, like I mentioned with Kevin Lee, making it unpredictable, making your opponent guess when you're coming in, feints, and there's I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs, but that's just how it works. And I just think Anderson is the better MMA wrestler. like I said, if you he uses his striking game well to close the distance and shoot takedowns, he's actually got pretty good entries as well and good takedown attempts. He completes like a near 50% of his takedowns attempted, which is a pretty good start. And to be fair to Patrick Cummins, even on the other hand, he completes just over 40% of his takedowns, which is a good rate as well. Um, but all fighters start on the feet. I think Anderson's a far better striker. He's got better boxing. Again, it's nothing to an elite level, but it's crisp enough to be a lot better than someone like Patrick Cummins and what he offers. I don't think he really offers anything great towards the striking. He normally swings a little, not too fussed about landing perfectly, but he just wants to close that distance and lock his opponent up, push him against the cage, and try and get that takedown. And to be fair to Patrick Cummins, people were writing him off a lot. A couple of fights ago, it was the fight. Was it Gian Vellante? No, it was Jan Blachowicz. So a lot of people were writing him off against Jan Blachowicz, and I actually bet Jan in that fight as well. And this is before Jan's had his resurgence, by the way. So he did fight a completely different Jan to what we saw against Jimmy Manuwa. But yeah, a lot of people ripped Patrick Cummins off at that point. He got knocked out by a little nog, brutalised. He got brutalised by Glover Teixeira as well. He's not got a good chin. His chin is so bad, but he's a weird case because although he's got such a bad chin, his durability is pretty on point. And what I mean by that, if you go back and watch his fights, he'll get rocked really easily, he'll get dazed really easily, he'll be getting wobbled and teed off on the fence, but the dude's so fucking hard to put away. Like, you look at the amount of shots Glover Teixeira threw at him, clean shots, clean uppercuts. He took an absolute he takes a beating to go out, but the problem is for Patrick Cummins is, even if you don't get Patrick Cummins out of there, the fact that he's got rocked and dazed and he's then eating a load of shots really plays on his cardio, and that's a gas tank that's already not very good as well. So he comes with a lot of problems, Patrick Cummins, and if he can't get fighters down to the mat, I mean, he's on a 2-fight win streak, fair play to him, and those 2 fights he got the wins because he was able to get his fighters down to the mat, and often. So that, like I say, fair play. But when he can't get his fighter to the mat and he's got to strike and really expend that energy and that cardio, that's where he's going to come unstuck. And I think that's where he's going to come unstuck against Anderson as well. Anderson is, like I say, is definitely the better striker. He lands slightly more strikes per minute. He gets hit a lot less too. Cummins is really hittable, like I've just mentioned, getting rocked really easily. I think Cummins will engage in the clinch early on and start pressing his wrestling game. I think that'll be his strategy in this fight and his game plan. I actually think he's going to be pretty successful in that first round. I think that he will get Corey Anderson down a couple of times, but Corey Anderson, believe me, will make him pay for trying to get those takedowns. He's not going to get them easily. Cummins is going to expend energy and, like I say, use his gas tank to really get Anderson down to the mat. Anderson could pop straight back up as well, or he could get controlled. But part of me is almost conceiving that first round. I'm pretty sure that Cummins is going to come out and win that first round, but he's going to win that first round because he really puts it on Corey Anderson and he really expends that energy. I think when Cummins comes out in that second round after winning round 1, I think he's going to be tired. I think Anderson's going to be the fresher guy, and at that point Anderson's got a choice. Anderson can either pick him apart on the feet with his boxing, which I think he might actually do. I think that'll be the route that he does take, or he could close distance and try and get Cummins to the mat and lay on him for a couple of rounds. So Anderson's got options from that point once Cummins is tired, and I'm pretty confident at some point in this fight early on Cummins is going to start tiring visibly, and that's when Anderson's going to take over. The one thing to mention, I know a couple of people out on Twitter have bet a fight doesn't go the distance, because they're both really, really chinny. I've mentioned Cummins. I'm not going to leave out Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson's taken some punishment as well, but the thing is with Corey Anderson, the knockouts that he's taken, especially recently as well, he got he got a brutal head kick landed on him against Ovin Semprou, a fight that he was winning. He was about to 30-27 Ovin Semprou, and he just got hit with this head kick from hell, knocked him clean out. Like I said with Edson Barboza early on in my breakdown with that fight and Kevin Lee, I think if you put most other light heavyweights in the way of that kick that OSP landed on Corey Anderson, I think they get knocked out as well. He also got knocked out pretty brutally by Jimmy Manuwa, but again, Jimmy Manuwa is a hard as fuck hitter, hardly ever goes to a decision. He's only been to the decision twice in his career. Pretty much all the other wins have come by knockout. Quick striker, hard striker. He would put most of that division out. In fact, he's already put a lot of that division out. And then before that, those were his last two losses. Before that, you've got to go all the way back to 2015, so nearly 3 years ago, where he got TKO'd by Gian Vellante. But that's a TKO, not a knockout. He's only been brutally knocked out twice, and like I said, both of those knockouts probably would have happened against most of the other division as well. So although Corey Anderson is chinny and his chin will be worse for that after those last two knockouts, I don't see either of these guys having the power to knock each other out. Neither is a harder hitter. Of course, one good shot on the button could put one of them away. You can never rule that one out, but I just think that it's not going to be. I don't think anyone's going to be throwing big bombs. I don't think anyone's going to land anything big. I just think it's going to be a technical fight, and in a technical fight, I think Corey Anderson will just fight smart. He'll wait for Patrick Cummins' gas tank to empty, and at that point, I think he'll just pick him apart on the feet. I think once he realises, maybe at the start of round two or halfway through round two, I think once he realises that he's actually having a lot of success with his strike, and there's no need to go to the wrestlers because he's winning the fight and Cummins isn't offering anything back. I just don't think he will bother going to the ground. I think he will happily stay on his feet. I think he will happily just easily pick apart Patrick Cummins, and I think he'll win a comfortable 29-28 decision victory. So just to recap that's and all my bets for the card so far. I've got 2.5 units on Kevin Lee at -120. I've got 2.5 units on Brett Johns at -105, and I have 2 units on Corey Anderson at +115. So moving into the quickfire round. The first fight to talk about, we've got Frankie Edgar versus Cub Swanson. This is a fight that honestly I have seen some good some good cappers betting this fight, betting on Edgar, who is ultimately my pick. But my advice to anybody listening to this podcast is do not go near this fight. Frankie Edgar's my pick for a reason. I think he will win. I think the takedowns will play a part. The reason why I wouldn't go near this fight if I were you is Frankie Edgar got brutally knocked out by Brian Ortega just a few weeks ago. Not only should Edgar not even be training right now or training full time, but he's in a fight camp ready for a fight against a guy that brawls. Yeah, the takedowns will be there for Edgar, but every fight starts on the feet. Edgar's got to close distance and level change and take Cub Swanson down. I cannot fathom why Edgar wants to take. Well, I can get why Edgar wants to take this fight. He wants to get over that his first knockout loss against Brian Ortega. He really wants to get over it, and that's fair play. But listen, there's a time and the place, and I just don't think it's a smart move right now. He must. I mean, I don't know this. I can't confirm this, but he must be going against medical advice as well, because, like I said, it was literally just a few weeks ago that it happened. It wasn't long at all. And then I don't get why the UFC is allowing it to happen. Why they've booked it so fast. It's just all a bit strange to me as well. And I could be wrong. I heard on the grapevine that I think his father might have died quite recently as well since his last fight. I think. Don't quote me on that. I've not really dug into that information that I heard. But if that is true, then what sort of mental state is he going to be in? There's just so many red flags in this fight, and that's the reason why I haven't bet. But ultimately, my pick is Frankie Edgar by decision. So in the next fight in the heavyweight division, we've got Chase Sherman against Justin Willis. Now it's going to surprise a lot of people, this pick. I know some people are going to be like, "Oh yeah, well you bet Chase Sherman before, and that's why you're picking him here," and it's not. Yeah, I lost a bet on Chase Sherman last time out. It was a bad bet. I thought it was a good read. In fact, no, sorry, it wasn't. It wasn't a bad bet. I had a good read on the fight, and I thought he had an obvious path to victory against Abdul Sharakimov. It just wasn't to be that night. But I'm picking Chase Sherman again here. Definitely not a bet, because he has now shown that he's chinny. I actually thought he had a pretty good chin for heavyweight, Chase Sherman, but it's pretty obvious now that he hasn't, and also getting finished as well in the way he did in his last fight didn't look great either. But I just think that Justin Willis isn't very quick on his feet. He's not light on his feet. He's a very big heavyweight. He has to cut to make weight for heavyweight. I think if Justin Willis gets a hold of Chase Sherman and tries to get him to the mat, I think he will have problems in doing so, but eventually he will succeed, and that's his path to victory. But if Chase Sherman decides to stay on the outside and keep his distance from Justin Willis, I could see him just pointing his way to a decision victory. We've not seen too much of Justin Willis yet to say, yeah, he's the beast that we think that he might be, and I just think that speed, movement will be there for Chase Sherman. All Chase Sherman's got to do to not lose this fight is keep distance, because he's not going to have a strength advantage. He hasn't got the wrestling advantage, and if he gets put on his back, he's definitely not getting up. So it's a close fight, and that's, the lines don't reflect that. But I also, Chase Sherman's a big underdog, but I also wouldn't recommend going out and putting an underdog bet on Chase Sherman, because I just don't think that'd be a good bet. So ultimately, that's why I'm passing. But yeah, I think Chase Sherman will win a decision. Next fight, we've got David Branch and Thiago Marreta Santos. Good matchup, really, really good matchup. My pick's Thiago Santos. Before this fight, I might have said that, David Branch is definitely live. He can get him down. But the thing is, Thiago Santos is that dangerous of a striker. People do try and take him down, and although he hasn't fought a great wrestler yet, he has shown that he is tough to take down, and he does make you pay when you get inside. When you get inside to take him down, he'll hit you with some hard shots, and if you do manage to take him down, he showed against Anthony Smith, he can pop right back up again. Again, Smith isn't a great wrestler, but to me, you can only go on what you've seen on tape, and he does look like he's got a decent stand-up game. I wasn't betting this. David Branch is a tricky out for any fighter. His fundamentals are so on point. He doesn't do anything spectacular specifically, but like I say, his fundamentals are on point. He knows how to grind. He knows how to win a fight. I do think it is going to be a bit too much for him here, and I do think he's going to get knocked out. I would probably say under 1.5 rounds, but I'm not betting that either, even though I'm being specific with the totals there. So yeah, my pick's Thiago Santos. I'm not betting him just because like I say, I think David Branch will pose some threat, but not too much. I just don't want to play around with that sort of fight. So yep, Thiago Santos by knockout. Next, we've got Jim Miller and Dan Hooker. This is a fight that I actually taped to bet on. The bookies, unfortunately, have got this absolutely spot on. I wanted to fade the vet in Jim Miller. Dan Hooker's been looking better. I writ him off against Mark Diakese in his last fight, and even though it wasn't a spectacular fight, he did what he needed to do to get the win. He also did what he needed to do to get the win against Ross Pearson. He also looks decent against Yair Rodriguez, even though he lost a decision in that fight. I just think Hooker is just a good all-round fighter. He's not he doesn't excel in any specific area, in my opinion. But he's got skills all around MMA, and I just thinking this is a really, really good fight for him, and it's a fight that I think he'll earn a really comfortable decision win. I don't think he'll finish Jim Miller. I doubt he'll sub him. Miller's a beast with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's also got a chin on him as well, and Hooker doesn't pose too much power. So I think it will be a 30-27 decision. The reason I haven't bet it is I think Dan Hooker's like -300. I'm not even going to even contemplate that. So Dan Hooker by decision. The next fight we've got Ryan LaFlare against Alex Garcia. Again, another fight that I take to bet on, and the line is actually pretty fair on this, and it's a line that I think is bettable, but I have passed. And my pick's Ryan LaFlare. The reason why I've passed on this is he just got brutally knocked out by Cowboy Oliveira. He made a lot of mistakes in that fight. He came in at the wrong time. He had his hands down. He had his chin out. You know, he did a lot of things wrong. I know it's only small things, but listen, small things could be the difference between you winning and losing a bet. I think that Ryan LaFlare can score takedowns on Alex Garcia. He's going to be the slightly bigger fighter. All LaFlare has to do in this situation is not get knocked out, because Alex Garcia does close distance well. He leads with that lead hook, that lead left hook, to overhand right. So there are shots where I have seen openings and flaws in Ryan LaFlare defensively. So I could definitely see LaFlare getting caught and knocked out. Ultimately, my pick is going to be Ryan LaFlare. I couldn't bet it just because of the flaws in his striking, or the advantages that Garcia will have in his striking, and also LaFlare's been plagued with injuries, like wrist injuries, torn ACL I think it was, and an LCL. So it's where he's at now in this stage of his career. He's not a fighter that's fought often either. So LaFlare's my pick, but it's a pass from me. Next up, we've got Magomed Bibulatov against Ulka Sasaki. Now, this is one that I think that could potentially catch a lot of people out, and I know I said it in his last fight. It's going to make it look like I'm fading Bibulatov, and I'm definitely not. I think he's a great fighter. But in his last fight, I did pick him to win. He lost, but I also did say to a lot of people, be very careful with the line. He was facing a dangerous John Moraga, and he got knocked out in round one. But people jumped on that -300, -400 line of Bibulatov last time, and it's around that line this time. The reason I'm saying be careful on it is because Ulka Sasaki is really, really tall, really, really long, really rangy. Got a half decent distance management. If you get him down to the mat on his back, he's got long limbs. He'll be throwing up submissions. He's got a decent submission game. We saw that against Wilson Hayes when he fought him. Actually, I bet Wilson Hayes in that fight, and Ulka Sasaki had me worried in that last round. I'm sure he took Hayes' back and had the rear naked choke locked in. He's just, I can't really totally put my finger on it. I know I've given you a couple of reasons why I think Ulka Sasaki is live in this fight for sure, but I just can't put my finger on it. I just think overall he's just a really tricky fighter to fight at that weight, and that's because he's just so much taller than everybody else, and they find it hard to deal with that, with there being flyweights. So my pick's Bibulatov. I think that he could score takedowns, especially late on in the fight. He will have moments where he will have long periods of time where I think he's dominant on the mat. So my pick's Magomed Bibulatov to win by decision, but absolutely a no bet from me. Next up, we've got Siyar Bahadurzada versus Luan Chagas. These last few fights I've not really put any tape into. I think Luan Chagas will come out with a win here. How he does it, I'm not sure. I think it could end up being a decision because he has shown that he does slow down. His gas tank isn't the best. But I just think from a technical perspective, he's the slightly better striker. He's a slightly better grappler. He might lack in regards to the strength. So if Bahadurzada gets in close on him, body locks him, throws him to the mat, he might have some success there. But overall, I just think over 3 rounds, Luan Chagas will do enough to take a decision. So my pick's Luan Chagas by decision victory. And then next we've got Leslie Smith versus Aspen Ladd. And my pick's Leslie Smith here, and I'm not sure how many people it will surprise. I've not seen too much of Aspen Ladd either. I know a lot of people are quite high on her. This is just a pick. I wouldn't recommend betting on this fight. There's a lot of intangibles, a lot of question marks. But the reason why I'm picking Leslie Smith to win is that she's just game as fuck, man. Like she's one of the best. She's one of the most fun women fighters to watch for sure. She puts pressure on. She walks forward, throwing shots. Doesn't really care too much about a defensive striking, which obviously isn't great to bet on, and that's the reason why I've not bet on her. because she's the underdog in this fight. But yeah, she's just a fun fighter to watch. She's wild. She'll leave it all in the cage, and I'll sit back. I'll enjoy this one, and I'm sure everyone else will as well. My pick's Leslie Smith to win by decision. Then next up we've got Merab Dvalsihvili against Ricky Simon. This fight again, it could end up coming down to a bit of a wrestling takedown battle. I think Ricky Simon will probably have more success in doing this. I think he's also the slightly better fighter in the stand-up on the feet as well. Dvalsihvili in his last fight, he didn't look like he didn't really look too comfortable striking with Frankie Saenz. I think it was the wrong decision in that fight for what it's worth. I think Dvalsihvili did win that fight. I think the judges got that one wrong. But ultimately, I just think Ricky Simon's gonna really put it on Dvalsihvili, and I think he'll come away with a decision victory. So then, next we've got, and the last fight to break down, Tony Martin versus Keita Nakamura. Now this is a fight where I was actually looking at to bet as well. I do favour Nakamura in this fight. I think he will win. I think he'll submit Tony Martin as well. The dude's got 15 rear naked chokes out of 18 submission victories. So 15 rear naked choke wins. Yeah, some of them were outside of the UFC in lower quality organisations. But the fact is, when you've got that sort of stat and you've got 15 rear naked chokes out of 18 submission wins, you then start to get labelled a specialist in that area, and I think he is a specialist at taking that back and getting those rear naked chokes. Tony Martin's also coming up to welterweight as well, so he's always been a big lightweight, finally stepping up, but he's not going to be undersized against Nakamura. He's going to be the bigger fighter, so this is where I've got the question marks on Tony Martin. He's going to be the bigger fighter, but he's not going to have an opponent that's that much smaller than him this time. But then is he going to pack more weight and more strength with the weight? Is he gonna be able to brutalise people now at welterweight because he's a lot stronger? And if he can, how does that affect his cardio? So as you can see, me just breaking this down, there's just a lot of question marks and questions that I can't answer until I see this debut at welterweight. So my pick's going to be Nakamura by submission. I just think that Tony Martin has shown that he is defensively vulnerable on the mat. I think Nakamura could definitely take advantage of that because, like I say, he's a specialist at taking that back and getting that rear naked choke. So the pick is Keita Nakamura to win by submission. And that's all she wrote for this breakdown podcast, for this betting podcast. So first of all, I just want to say that if you've missed any of these breakdowns and you want to have a read up later on, I've got all my breakdowns written on my website, which is newsomemma.co.uk/bet-picks. Also, just to mention, last week on the podcast, I did say I only had 3 bets. I did end up placing another bet closer to fight day, which was Cowboy Oliveira to win inside the distance, which cashed. So please make sure you're going onto my betmma.tips page and you follow, which is betmma.tips/Newsome MMA. Make sure you're following me on Twitter, which is at Newsome_MMA, because this is where I put all these sometimes I do have these last minute decisions where I'll see a great line. I got that line at plus 290 for Cowboy Oliveira to finish Carlos Condit. I put a unit on that, won 2.9 units, so that was a great bet. I know a couple of people also tailed that line as well after I posted it, so make sure you follow me on Twitter. Make sure you're checking out my betmma.tips page, however you want to do it, however you want to follow my bets. But I do put sometimes I do put a bet on after the podcast. Make sure you're on my website. I've got all kinds of content on there coming from all over the world, everything for every MMA fan to enjoy on that website. And I've also got a huge announcement, some very exciting news for myself and Newsome MMA, which I'm going to be announcing on Twitter tomorrow as well, so keep a lookout for that. As for YouTube and this video, please like, subscribe, comment. I'm always happy to chat to everybody. It all helps develop the channel as well. And that's all. I just want to say thank you for listening, and we'll see you back in a couple of weeks.